Welcome to the MeltDown. We're talking the business of sports with host Vince Thompson, the president, founder, and CEO of Melt, one of the leading sports marketing companies in the country.
Welcome back to the MeltDown. I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, CEO of Melt. And I'll shamelessly plug my new book, now available on pre-order at Amazon, Build Brand You. And you can follow me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Vinny Inc. or LinkedIn at Vince Thompson. Today's topic is Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence writing the new rules for the future of the NCAA and student athletes. But first, I must eat a little crow here, as I've done before. In an earlier meltdown, I gave Trevor 500 million reasons why he shouldn't play this fall. And boy, was I wrong. And boy, am I thankful and glad that he's playing this fall. I actually had the privilege to address a class, a marketing class that Trevor was in last week at Clemson, through Zoom, of course. And we didn't interact or anything, but had I been able to address him directly, here is what I would have told him now. You are now making a much larger and far greater impact than your own personal future net worth on hundreds of thousands of current and future student athletes in the billions and billions of dollars, because you and your peers have become the face and the voice of all student athletes that's going to resonate for future generations. Here's what Trevor and his squad posted recently. Basically, a player's Bill of Rights. Hashtag we are united. Hashtag we want to play. Let's see what they say. Let's unpack them today on the meltdown. First and foremost is they just want to play football, paging the Big Ten and the Pac-12. But secondly, establish mandated health and safety protocols for COVID and other injuries and illnesses. We've already got world-class sports medicine departments at these universities. Let's add to that. Secondly, give players the chance to opt out. They don't want to play this fall, but maybe opt back in. Grant them extended eligibility. They do it in other sports, particularly MLB and college baseball. So let's make all of these rules consistent and if we're truly serving the mission of college athletes, let's give them opportunities to maybe pursue their career for a payday. But if it doesn't work, allow them to come back. What do we really have to lose? Use their voices to establish open and honest and transparent lines of communications, a college football players association, not a union, but an association of unified voices. Obviously, this representation would be within the major Power 5 conferences, but let's break it down to a lot of other conferences. American Athletic Conference, MAC, MAC, Sun Belt, Colonial Athletic Conference, and on down the line. So in addition to those Bill of Rights that Trevor posted, I've got a few of my own that I'd like to share with him and you today. Let's let these guys get compensated for their name, image, and likeness right now. Now, obviously, we've got to have some clearly defined rules. If Auburn, for instance, is sponsored by Coca-Cola, would Auburn quarterback Bo Nix be able to be photographed holding a competitor's product in his hand? Maybe, maybe not. Obviously, there's some tricky rules around trademarking and whether he's going to work with a school. But let's figure out some common ground and rules and allow these athletes. Why wait? Why make them leave money on the table right now, particularly when all the eyes of the nation are on college football right now. Provide a fair revenue split for the student athletes and different funds to create cause and community, and a pool of funds to support non-revenue athletes to save and maximize those programs in jeopardy. The average budget of an athletic department is somewhere between $20 million and nearly $200 million. Now, obviously in a pandemic, there's a lot going on. There's sports programs being cut, staff being administered, furloughed as well. But this could be a salvation for non-revenue sports if we did it right now. What do we really have to lose with these massive budgets? We can create a workable economic and financial formula and equation to make this work. Many of you may not know that a college football scholarship is actually not 4 years. It's a 1-year renewable contract at the leisure of the university with the student athlete. And in that contract, which is one reason name, image, and likeness is at our forefront now, that player forgoes the use of their image and likeness to that university in perpetuity. Now, obviously, it's been tangled up and resolved in the courts now. But why don't we extend these scholarships for 4 full years? Obviously, you have to put some academic standards behind it and those types of things, but it should not have ever been a 1-year renewable at the leisure of the university. And post-play, and not only for football players, I'm referring to all athletes here. Extend healthcare benefits paid by the university for at least 2 years post-playing career. Many of these athletes have injuries. Many of them maybe even have to quit the game or their sport because of that injury. And then many of them are left to their own devices to try to get substandard or very expensive health care to treat these injuries. So let's extend them at least 2 years. And another one that I am very passionate about is I know a lot of athletic departments are doing very well in career development for student athletes because they have very limited amount of time. They're working out, practicing, competing, sleeping, eating, studying, or attending classes. And they're also arduous NCAA compliant rules. So I'm passionate about career development. Sally Jenkins in the Washington Post, you should read that article last weekend. Why don't we develop a sports curriculum and sports marketing curriculum for these student athletes? Why aren't we doing internship programs, pulling on the sponsors of that particular athletic department and sponsors of these major television networks, ESPN and CBS? Why aren't we pooling internships? Why aren't we doing job training? Why aren't we doing career fairs for these kids that need it the most? Leverage the schools, the alumni, the emotional connections, and the sponsors. The student athletes are the greatest kids to hire. I've hired many of them in my career. Let's put an effort against this. This could be a major development area. I'll volunteer to help any athletic department in the country to help these student athletes. Allow them to form a collective rights group. And I'm not even just talking about football. If the Auburn women's equestrian team wants to form a collective with all the other women's equestrian teams across the country, let's allow them to come together. Let's allow them to maximize and monetize sponsorships on a scaled platform. And many times it would even create a conflict with a majority of the sponsors because these would be new sponsors, new money, endemic dollars such as saddles and boots and bits. And for goodness sake, NCAA, not allowing them to promote female products? Really? Give me a break. It's an essential part of living as anything. These female student athletes represent amazing messaging, empowerment. So maybe just a tad of common sense here. Do not let anyone with an existing vested financial interest, you know who you are, in the athletic department involved in how this is governed and administrated. You cannot serve two masters. And if you have a financial relationship with that athletic department now, whether it be a rights holder, a rights guarantor, a licensor, licensee, whatever it is, we need an independent group monitoring and governing this. And in the future, with billions of dollars of rights being negotiated on their behalf, guess who's not at the table? The product on the field, the player, the student athlete. Why not put a Trevor at the table in new negotiations? Why not put an SEC quarterback at the table? Why not put an SEC gymnast or an ACC volleyball player? They might actually add some really, really amazing input to this process and then set them up to be a part of the process long after their playing days. I'm very passionate too about HBCU schools. Let's trickle the money down into those programs. Many times they have less budgets, fewer dollars to go around, but amazing programs, amazing schools, amazing legacies. Let's build curriculums for these kids. Let's allow a rising tide to lift all boats here. More on HBCU later. We're going to come back to that in another meltdown. And we're seeing this a lot now, but allow these students a day off to vote. But here's another catch. Begin educating them right now on absentee voting, because maybe they can't get home to come vote. But if you allow them to set up a system now to absentee vote, then they would make sure all of their votes and voices counted. And for goodness sakes, sometimes let's take some of this amazing vast amounts of dollars and provide travel for the parents and the significant others in these families. Many times they don't have the economic advantages to be able to travel. Many times they want to see their kids play just like I would. So let's create a situation and a solve that is a win-win. And arguably, if a player's parents or loved ones are in the stands, they'll perform better. So let's provide these opportunities. So in closing, Trevor, your peers, colleagues, you're helping shape and form the equal help and voice and a seat at the table that will affect the future generations of student athletes for many years to come. That's not a bad thing and long overdue. So thank you, Trevor. You have helped student athletes finally find their voice. I'm Vince Thompson, founder, chairman, CEO of Melt. You can follow me on social media at Vinny Inc., VINNYINC, on LinkedIn. We publish a lot of papers. Stay tuned for the release of my forthcoming book, Build Brand You, out this fall and available now for pre-order at Amazon.com. It's your personal guide to building your personal brand to land that coveted internship or job in a brutal COVID internship and job market. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MeltATL, and follow Vince at Vinny Inc., and on LinkedIn as Vince Thompson.